Quiet, numbskulls, I'm broadcasting.
We're busting up the joint. We're tearing out all the wires. We're busting it up so good, all the Queen's horses and all the Queen's men will never put old Raymond back together again. You don't work anymore. That's an order. Anybody invites you to a game of solitaire, you tell them, sorry, Buster, the ball game is over.
Oh, this is Jake's old room. You two can stay in here tonight if you want. His mother and I aren't old-fashioned about that kind of thing, fucking and whatnot.
Well, I have to get home tonight. I have work in the morning.
I know this bed.
What's happening, everybody? Welcome to episode number 184 of the Flicksation Podcast. My name, Eric Madsen. I'm here at Flicksation Studios, P. City, Wisco, hanging out. Regular episodes sort of back. Quarantine isn't totally over, but theaters are opening up slowly. We do see some probable opportunities to catch a film or two in the fairly empty theaters in the near future. So, Ian the Minister, Boulder, Colorado. Ian, welcome back.
Thanks. Yeah, have not been to the theater yet, but it does seem possible. I actually found one very close to me that for some reason costs half as much as every other one. So I don't know if that means I'm twice as likely to get the virus or not. But that's probably where I'm going, so I think I will make it back. Otherwise, yeah, I've mentioned to both to Eric, and these are two huge mental or life changes for me. One being that sports are fucking terrible. Basketball, completely awful. Soccer, completely awful, which means that I love movies again. I don't know if it came across, but I hadn't been watching that many. But I love movies, hate sports. And number two is like the first time in 5 years, it's like huge switch. I don't know what happened, but off the beer, on the vodka. And it's kind of sticking. So cranberry and vodka today. It's been a while.
And it's fall, too. You're always more in a cinematic mood, Minister, in the fall. So
it is true. Yeah, it hit like... I told you offline I wouldn't mention the weather. I just think it's embarrassing. But the change, which I won't go into, but the quick drop did feel like that fall movie season that I always get, that tingle over that fades, but some good memories of when the weather changes in the fall.
And Robert Gassaway over in Phoenix, Arizona. Robert, big temperature drop over there? No.
Yeah, it feels good. Big step for it's still smoke in the sky and everything. So it's kind of, at least could be worse. Could be around the fires in California or Oregon, but it's still a big difference over here. It keeps it cool because of the smoke in the air, though. But you don't want to be out there walking and running around in it. So I'm staying in, hopefully trying to get into the back into the fall movie mood. I haven't been watching a lot of movies. I've been watching a lot more sports, the opposite of Ian, just because I know they can go away at any time, baseball and NBA. So I'm just watching as much as I can. But I did finally go to the theater for the first time in 6 months this week. I went to go watch Inception. I guess it's the 10th anniversary of it, and it was in theaters, and it just strikes me as a film that I've only seen in the theater, and that's the best place to see it, and I really like it. And I just made sure that, I like how you can go on the theater app and see how many seats are sold, and I could tell that it was like less than 5 people in a big theater. So I was comfortable with that, and all the employees are behind plexiglass, even the ticket person and the concessions, which I didn't use, so didn't get within 15 feet of anybody, could just watch a movie and feel safe about it. But, you see some people in the theater not wearing masks, and I decided to keep mine on the whole time. And so I don't know, I have to kind of that's kind of, I guess, 5, 6 people in the theater is kind of my personal limit right now before I'm comfortable going back. I'm not going to go watch Tenet when it's popular and new in the theater. I'll just go to very select screenings that don't have many people, but I like that you can see that online these days. So I watched Inception about dreaming, and then I watched The Manchurian Candidate about brainwashing, and I watched the other version of the remake of it, and we also watched the new Charlie Kaufman movie, which is just more twisted than any of them. So it's been a lot of very heady stuff for me in these heady times, and you can tell it's different for me because tonight I'm drinking wine. Stick around to the What You Drinking segment to figure out which wine it is, but I never drink wine, not on the podcasts. But tonight I'm drinking wine, so something's different.
Well, all right. Yeah, those I mentioned at least one of the two films there that we're discussing this evening. So in chronological order tonight, we're talking about the 1962 version of The Manchurian Candidate, and later on in the show, the new Charlie Kaufman written and directed film, I'm Thinking of Ending Things. That is the name of that one. So that's coming up later in the show. All right, so the 1962 version of The Manchurian Candidate, a former prisoner of war is brainwashed as an unwitting assassin for an international communist conspiracy. This one stars Frank Sinatra, Lawrence Harvey, Janet Leigh, and Angela Lansbury, and it's directed by the one and only John Frankenheimer. So yeah, I don't know y'all's history with this one. I had seen the Denzel Washington version, probably not in the theaters, but probably shortly after it was released on home video. So I'm familiar with the at least subject material and all, but always been a cue of shame for me here, the 1962 version. Robert, was this the first time for you?
Yeah, I had never seen. I'd always heard about the one, this older, the original one on Criterion Collection, and then I knew about Denzel's remake of it. That's what made me want to watch it, because I thought it would line up with some of the crazy things we're seeing in political campaigns these days. But that's more of the remake is more about the campaign and more about a candidate. So I thought this old one would be that too, but this older one's not as focused on a campaign candidate. It's more about the brainwashing, and it does lead up to a convention, and there's people slandering each other. So it does line up with kind of the current state of our country. So that's why I kind of wanted to watch this one. But I was surprised that you guys hadn't seen it either.
I had seen it, but it's one of those ones that I saw at least 15 years ago. So going into it again, I had real reservations, because I did like it a lot, but I was like 19. But I had real reservations of maybe what I worried, kind of like with Reds, where I was like, I loved that, but I don't know how that's going to play now, kind of for different reasons. But I was worried politically it wouldn't play the same way and stuff. So there's real worries about like how one would feel about the Korean War, movies at that time with racism and stuff, and jingoism and stuff. So I had worries going in, but I was a big fan then.
All right, Robert, you checked out this one today, so fresh take for you. How did the 1962 version play out for you?
I thought it was great. I liked it a lot more than I actually thought I would, because I just knew Sinatra was in it, but I didn't know much more beyond that. I had heard the name John Frankenheimer, but it turns out the only movie of his I've seen is Ronin, a Robert De Niro movie. That's kind of dry, but it's not bad. But he's made some other films that have some good reviews, just not that I've seen. And Frank Sinatra, this is only the second film I've seen of his. I like Guys and Dolls, and I knew that he was like an established actor by 1962 when this was made. But I didn't really know, is he a good actor? Do people consider him a good actor? Maybe he's only good at playing cool, like he does on stage and his persona. Or like in Guys and Dolls, he plays like a gambler. He plays a cool guy. So here, if he's not playing a cool guy, is he going to be good? And then, I didn't know Angela Lansbury was in this, but I've never seen her films. I've only known her from Murder, She Wrote, that my parents used to watch. Janet Leigh, I only know from Psycho. I guess she was in John Carpenter's The Fog as well, but not super familiar with her. And but the star of this film is Lawrence Harvey. I'd never have seen or heard of this guy before. But by the end, the cast really impressed me, and I really liked the story. I thought it was super interesting. And we do follow Larry Harvey's character. He's not bad. He's just he's under mind control. He's brainwashed in this film. So it's not until he gets boozed up late night with old Blue Eyes with Sinatra and tells like some past stories that make him like tear up and get emotional that I started really appreciating his acting. But he does have a bit of like Anthony Perkins in him from when he's thinking about his mother and dealing with his mother, Angela Lansbury, in this film, from Psycho with Anthony Perkins, that kind of relationship, because Angela Lansbury here it's really interesting to see her play a heel and a mother. And she's only, I think, 36 or 37 years old when she made this film. She's 1 year older than Larry Harvey, but she's playing his mother and nobody questions it. Or nobody questioned it back then, I don't think. And she gets to go heavy, and she has a monologue towards the end of this film that's pretty show-stopping. And I started thinking, I'm thinking about current times. Like, you can't help but the political situation with the presidential election coming up in 2 months or less. Donald Trump definitely has some Angela Lansbury in him. I'll say that much. Back to Sinatra, I think he is a good actor. This showed me he's playing cold here. He's not just cool. He's not playing cool guy here. He's very cold. He's not cool here. He's very sweaty. He has this sweaty upper lip throughout most of the film. And for the first half, he's either upset or he's out of it altogether because he's been brainwashed by the government as well. So we're following these sweaty, paranoid people that have been brainwashed by the government. But then it shifts with, I think, around Sinatra's character. I can see why. I think he controlled the rights to adapt this, or he controlled some part of making this. And interestingly enough, he pushed for Lucille Ball to play the mother character instead of Angela Lansbury. But, I think eventually that would have been an interesting choice, but I'm glad they went with the way they did. But we're following Sinatra and Harvey as they're so mixed up. They don't know up from down in this movie. That's so frustrating that they don't really win out. It's a pretty crushing, sad film. Like there's a love story going on, but it's kind of fake. It's made up. They're brainwashed, and so they're just being controlled. And love does not win out. Love doesn't conquer all in this movie at all. It's very cold. But we see a change about halfway through, I think, with Sinatra's character kind of going into detective mode to figure out his old battle buddy. Like, he's consoling his friend in pain when they're drinking that night, and then after that he kind of has to deconstruct his friend. It's like a good little noir vibe to it, the way that Sinatra's character goes about kind of figuring out how to help his friend and fix him. I think the filmmaking's really good. For a 1962 film, I don't see a lot of films that are kind of using this odd foregrounding staging in a couple scenes with just the camera placement and following shots. These canted angles make you suspect something isn't quite right. And then he's doing these weird upwipe transitions with a rising elevator. And the really interesting scene to me is the 360-degree shot in this. It's like a garden party, but it's also this war room of military officials in Korea, I think. It's but it looks like a garden party to the soldiers that have been brainwashed. They can't tell the difference, and they're calling the generals ma'am. And I think that's really artistically done, but it's also kind of played for comedy. It's got that juxtaposition of the garden club versus this war counselor or whatever. And it shifts between who we're seeing, who's participating in the meeting, who's in the scene, shifting as this scene goes on. And the aesthetics of the scene are different based on if we're looking at a garden party or like a war council. But it's this doctor, this bald Asian doctor guy that I don't know where he goes the second half of the film. He just kind of disappears. But at first, we see him giving this TED talk on governmental brainwashing of soldiers. And then we go to this scene with a press conference where Frank Sinatra is now kind of to take his mind off his PTSD and stuff, because it does jump around the timeline. We see a press conference with a communist scare disruption from a senator, and that happens to be Angela Lansbury's husband that she's kind of positioning to be more powerful by doing a Red Scare kind of thing and calling out people that disagree with them as communists. They're painting people in the party as being corrupted. But the scene focuses on the act of broadcasting and reporting that kind of disruption at this press conference. Not the message itself, but it's the media coverage and the government and the paranoia of it. And I don't know much about the Korean War, the Cold War. I know more about, but I haven't seen that. I mean, there's more movies about that. There's not a lot about the Korean War. And so I was kind of confused not having that background, but that kind of works in this film because the soldiers are confused too. Like they've been twisted, and the main character has been not just brainwashed, but they say also dry cleaned. Like he's had his brain wiped, his memory wiped multiple times. But it made me think like our government's sloppy with brainwashing because why don't they dry clean the other guys multiple times too? Because that's what gets them busted, gets them caught, because they didn't bother to like go back and re-wipe their memory, and it cost them. Came back to bite them. But these main characters are all out of their mind, like they're out of time and out of place with, like I said, PTSD, but also nightmares and memory loss and hypnosis. And even the narrator of this movie sounds like a CIA agent. Makes you very paranoid. Just the way he's describing it. And even the doctors, who are usually authorities, you can trust a doctor, but here the doctors are mad. The doctors cannot be trusted. And then the storyline jumps back and forth. It can't really be trusted for you to know really where you are when it does a jump cut. It takes you a minute to realize, oh, this is in the past. So that combined with the government being sloppy, it just really fits. I like how this movie's designed. All those layers are kind of off kilter from the very beginning. It paints that, and it's just really compelling throughout. And I think it is funny. Maybe Ian, did you pick up on some of the humor? Did you laugh? Do you think this is a funny movie? I thought it really was.
I did in a couple different ways. Sometimes it was funny because it actually was very good, clever dialogue, especially with Janet Leigh, I think, and her delivery and just her character, who makes decisions that make no sense, but it's fun to watch. And then also maybe some unintentional camp comedy to it. So I do think it was a funny movie, and that was surprising.
Definitely the Frank Sinatra fight scene got me chuckling. And then anything that the Senator Iselin, I think is his name, he's just kind of dumb funny. Like that's a comedic actor in a cast of more serious players. Everyone else is like a stage actor, and this guy seems like, I don't know, he's like the Robert Wool of his time, maybe. He's the Arliss of this film.
Yeah. And I mean, he's playing essentially McCarthy, who, at least in video clips, if he wasn't so, terrifying, is really funny how ridiculous he is. With that character, Eric, Senator Iselin seems like, I just have to bring it up now because it's in the notes. Gotta be a character Eric likes, but specifically I want to know if he makes this connection. One of Eric's favorite movies of all time, Major League. I saw this guy playing Senator Iselin reminded me a lot of the pitcher Eddie Harris from Major League. Wow. That's who I kept thinking of. You make no connection there? This kind of... Or is that a good connection, or do you like that? Or how about the character?
That's cool. I didn't get that, but good character. Yeah, good character, funny. And I will say, since we're talking about the Senator characters, always been a big fan of John McGinnis, who plays the other senator. And he's also good here. He's a character actor. You see him as a lot of butler type guys, or like business owners or whatever, but good turn here as the quote-unquote communist senator.
Yeah, I think that's Jordan, right? Senator Jordan.
Yeah,
and that is a holy shit moment when him and his daughter are taken out. I mean,
yeah, absolutely.
That was stunning to me, and it was more stunning than early on. There's the first murder of a fellow soldier on like a stage is a really shocking moment, but it wasn't as shocking as when it turns on basically the guy that's been brainwashed is destined to destroy everything that he loves, like his family, his the people, the people close to him, and like his country. Like he's trying to change it. He has to. He's programmed to. And so it must have been pretty audacious at the time, 1962, when this came out. I think they changed it from what I've heard from the book. The ending was more like overtly incestuous. This one is more subtle towards the end. But it's a very weird ending. I was kind of taken aback by this ending. It just seemed kind of ballsy. But I wondered, like, what happened to the narrator? What happened to, like, who was the narrator? What happened to that doctor? What happened to that other guy in the platoon, the black guy that had the dreams and called it out in the first place? Like, he just kind of disappeared. What happened to that soldier? What's up with Frank Sinatra's like table full of books about like horse diseases and Ulysses, and like he just has all these books on a table that he's really into weird subjects. I don't understand how that fits in with it's just really bizarre, but I liked all that stuff about it.
So I like it a lot, way more than I expected, as much as I ever did, I guess. It surprised me in a number of ways. So it's very plot heavy, actually. I mean, I don't know if it's super, but there's a lot. Like there is a plot that does seem to matter, but it's surprising what I come away with. It really was a mood. It was, you hear about 70s paranoid thrillers. Well, this was the 60s paranoid Cold War thriller, and pretty much within 5 minutes, as soon as we get into the brainwashing, which is really quickly, these soldiers are captured. There's I would say within 5 minutes, there's a real sinister paranoid feel to the whole thing, and it maybe only lets up in like little moments. Like there's one kind of side diversion with our main character, Harvey's character, falling in love, it's like this weird little diversion that does matter. But I thought it was interesting how much plot there was for it really to be about a feeling. So it all did matter, but it all just served that paranoid thing that I don't think let up at all. I don't think the sinister paranoia really did until it went black at the end. And I guess I was surprised because this seems like a very obviously political film, but I don't really know that it is making points that, it's not effective as some hard-hitting political statement of any sort. That was, like I said, that was my worry, because we're not the good guys in Korea. There's probably not good guys, but America's not good guys in Korea at all, and mostly throughout the Cold War. So I had worries, but it's really not, for a while you think it's kind of making fun of American patriotism and anti-communism, and then it twists, and then you think, oh no, it's actually making a comment maybe the other way. But I don't think it's actually saying much about any of that. It's more just trying to get the feeling that was in the air during that time. That I didn't live through it, but I sure buy it. And it's interesting because there's a bunch, like I said, people talk about 70s political thrillers really with a lot of love looking back at them, and stuff like The Parallax View. What is it? 3 Days of the Condor or something. Isn't that it? Yeah, I've seen them. And then All the President's Men, like stuff like that. And those are all looked back at so fondly, and I like all of them. But I think they're all substantially less good than this. I think all of those, I don't know, something's missing. This one's darker. It's bleaker. It may wrap up a little neater, and that's a little different. And I don't know if that necessarily is better or worse. I'm just kind of wrestling with that. But I think this is better, and part of it's because it doesn't inject action chase scenes, that stuff like The Parallax View does. So I don't know. I was surprised because I did not expect it to be as much of a precursor to those, and just to come out of it feeling like I like it that much better. I did wonder, because I just watched The Godfather, and maybe Robert just got rid of this belief, but I was wondering if this was the movie that the horse head in the bed of the Hollywood producer came from, because I know the singer character in The Godfather is supposed to be based on Sinatra, and of course The Godfather has him cut the head off the horse of a Hollywood producer and put it in his bed so that he'd get the role. Well, this seems like the big Sinatra role, so I thought this might be the one. But you said he had some kind of producing credit, so what's the movie? Maybe it's not this one.
Yeah, I think I heard something about some other movie.
Okay, because in The Godfather, it's all about the role's perfect for me. I'm just playing myself, and the producer doesn't want to give it to him because it's perfect for him and it'll make him a huge star again, and he doesn't want to deal with his bullshit. So I don't know if this is who Frank Sinatra is, but this sure seems like the biggest movie he was in as he was getting older. So anyway, Robert talked about the performances. I would say Sinatra's solid. He's probably the weakest link for me, but that's fine. He's definitely, outside of his embarrassing martial arts scene, he's pretty much fine.
And apparently half the film's budget went to his salary. He had a $2.2 million salary, half the film's budget. So that's why that scene is in there, and that's why he got to pick who he wanted to play, and he had some say over who got cast.
He needed that fight scene. And he doesn't get to be like the big hero necessarily. He's a good guy and stuff, and he helps, but it's not ultimately him that he kind of is. But I was surprised not necessarily because it's 1962, but just from memory, that it wasn't stodgy. It was, it's what Robert said. It's like quite inventive and impressive visually, and really, I think with the dialogue, I think it's funny. I think it's clever, more than I expected again. And I think there's kind of a strange brew to this thing, which I didn't expect, because maybe because of the comedy and the camp that I mentioned. Some of the camp comes from these performances, just the sheer intensity, like, like some of what's the main guy's name? Sorry, I keep forgetting his name. Lawrence Harvey. Yeah, like it kind of reminds me a little bit of like the way DiCaprio plays roles, where he's just insanely intense at times, and it's close-ups of him like exploding and like sweating. And there's some campiness to some of those close-ups, these really sweaty mental and nervous breakdowns of these characters. Extreme camp coming from Lansbury, of course, and the fight scene, I would say, but accidentally maybe. And I think the one time in the film I had to pause it because I was laughing too hard and I didn't want to miss things was really early, after they're abducted, and the scene Robert described really well, where they're being brainwashed, and it's kind of the hotel lobby talking about horticulture and actually being brainwashed by Soviets and Chinese and Korean communists. Lawrence Harvey's character is forced to kill two people, and the second person he kills is a young boy they call the mascot, who's too young to be at war, and he's just sitting there smiling. And Lawrence Harvey has to take a gun and from point blank range shoots him in the head. Very dark, not funny, except he's shooting him at point blank range, but for some reason, when he shoots him, the shot pulls way out, and the chair and the guy are pulled backwards, like at a weird angle, like completely not the angle that he shot him at. So it's like a diagonal angle, like somebody had a rope connected to a chair and they yanked it really fast, and the guy just flies sideways, and then his brains splatter all over a giant portrait of Joseph Stalin. Very funny scene. I don't know if you guys maybe didn't think it was funny, but if you watch it back, like the angle makes zero sense. We're getting into like JFK character back to the left. This doesn't make sense. There had to be a second shooter here. But that scene is accidental camp, I'd probably say. Yeah, I do just think that mood carried through the whole thing, and there was enough weirdness around throughout it, mixes of comedy, accidental and purposeful. Janet Leigh giving what I think is the best performance in the whole thing, but her character is batshit. Out of all these people are unraveling, yet Janet Leigh is full of confidence, full of command, and nothing she does makes any sense. But it's pretty great watching her. She just seemed like on another level to these people, even if she felt like maybe she was in a different movie. I have only seen her in probably Psycho and the I did the other show too, the Orson Welles one. That's one of my 10 favorite movies of all time. Touch of Evil. There we go. Yeah. But she's great. So 3 for 3. So I think while I'm not sure about how it wrapped up, if it's better or worse than the 70s ones, because it is tightly kind of like a bow on top, and I don't know if you're left feeling worried. I think those last 20 minutes are awesome. Like pretty much everything that happens. Even the score at times, I don't know how much there is, but there's even a couple parts that were surprising, like discordant, like piano stuff. And, I liked it, a lot.
Yeah, actually, with Janet Leigh specifically, I had this feeling while watching it that she wasn't even who she said she was, because she did feel like she was in a different movie. It suggested to me that something weird was going on, so I kept expecting to find out that he was seeing her, but it was actually like the Korean guy or whoever that doctor was.
Like a house plant or something.
Yeah, something like that. Just keeping Marco busy or whatever. I don't know.
Or she was working for Angela Lansbury, like to control.
Sure. Yeah.
She was another operative, or she was authority for him.
Yeah, to explain it, it's like there's a guy on a plane completely melting down, sweating and babbling, and she immediately says, "Well, I like this guy," and then the next day leaves her fiance and just like moves in with him for no reason. There's
Yeah.
nothing. Like this guy's like a guy in the street, basically like pissing himself, melting down, ready. And she's like, "That's the one."
Yeah, let's do this guy. Yeah, otherwise, I was really impressed with this as well. I did find that it just, very cutting edge feeling to me for being an early 60s film. I didn't expect the psychological, you knew it was going to be psychological, but very dark. Yeah, I didn't expect the darkness and just very well put together. I don't know how much of the credit goes to the filmmakers and how much of the credit goes to the author of the original book, but in the cast, I agree. I'm a big fan of this cast. I did like Sinatra a lot in this. I thought he was very much the heart of the film. Harvey is also very good. Angela Lansbury kind of knocked my socks off here, so I don't know if I had Janet Leigh in another movie that good, but yeah, I felt something a little off there, but she was quite good. And I just love how early on when we're kind of getting the establishment, but the things that the soldiers are seeing and the things that we know are actually going on with those training, and he has them kill the two guys and all that stuff. I just think that stuff is all just brilliant and well staged. Yeah, I've never not seen anything like that to this day, so I think it was very well done. Cinematography and stuff give this film the perfect environmental feel to fit the mood and stuff. I just think it's great. And Frankenheimer has 1,000 films, or just multiple films. I haven't seen a lot of them. I've seen maybe 5 or 6, and this really has a completely different feel to me than all of the other ones. So a little more heady here than I would usually expect from him. But yeah, just well done all around. Well done, for sure.
Better than Island of Dr. Moreau.
Yeah. Although that is entertaining in a train wreck kind of way. So
Yeah, this could have used Brando's little buddy.
yeah, I could have.
Brando's little buddy is Frank Sinatra. They were in Guys and Dolls together.
Yeah.
Nice. There you go.
But it's kind of crazy to me from what I was expecting from this film. Like, for as much as it has like a multinational backdrop and the Cold War and this experimental science project going on and these political factions, at the heart of it, it's just this crazy old lady who's like, "You're all going to be made to realize just how much you underestimated me." Like, it's all about her. It's just her. She put a lot of this into motion. I think she feels manipulated by the government as well, but she's part of the whole industrial machine, the whole mechanism, and put her son into it. And that's, I guess the book is even more twisted in that regard. But it's pretty great that from what I was expecting to be like a big picture thing, came down to this lady's thirst for vengeance and proving people wrong, basically, at any cost.
Yeah.
It's pretty great to have one mom and wife pulling the strings of the Soviet Union and the United States, like one trigger pull away from ruling the world. Pretty great.
Yeah, and I had mentioned John MacGyver earlier. Played Senator Jordan. I had 2 things I wanted to point out from him that were just kind of polar opposites on how effective they were. They were both very effective, but different things. So he kind of gives this speech to Angela Lansbury at this party. That's one of the heavier dramatic moments in the film. Mm-hmm. That's really good. And on the other side, probably my biggest laugh of this film was when what's his name? The character, the lead character here, Harvey, is it?
Harvey's the actor's name. I don't know what the guy's name is in the film. I keep forgetting. It's Shaw, right? Something Shaw. Raymond Shaw.
Yeah, Raymond Shaw. So he just basically out of nowhere announces that, "Hey, can I marry your daughter?" And they just start laughing and like winking at each other and stuff. That's good. And that just fades into a different scene from there. So yeah, well done in a lot of ways. Little touches like that.
It's also just funny how much of the card game Solitaire there is in this, like, on camera. It's not a cinematic game, but we've all seen, Hollywood has cranked out a bunch of poker movies. This is hands down the best Solitaire movie ever.
Hard to argue.
I mean, it might be better than all the poker ones.
True, and you don't need a table full of people, just one guy.
We'll have to ask Chad. All right, so that's the Manchurian Candidate from 1962, available for rent out on the streaming platforms. I think I saw that if you have the Cinemax extension on Amazon and some of the other services, it is part of that. But I rented it for $4, so worth a pull for sure. All right, that's going to take us into the What You Drinking segment here on the Flicksation podcast. Robert Gassaway, what you drinking?
I made some sangria recently, and I couldn't fit all the wine that I used, the white wine, into the pitcher, and I kept pouring it in. So I had some leftover wine, and I decided to drink it tonight, and it's a cheap wine that you would make sangria with. It's very sweet. It's from Barefoot. It's definitely cheap. It's a Riesling from California. It's super sweet, but it's just the end of the bottle. So I decided tonight's a good night to take it down.
Yeah, that Barefoot stuff, all super sweet, but always good in a pinch and not so hard on the wallet for sure. All right, Minister. So I was expecting here tonight to hear about your foray into autumn beers, but no.
Well, it's hot again. I won't go into temperature again. I'm not talking about the weather, but it's hot again, and it will be for months, I think. Yeah, I mean, we haven't done What You Drinking in so long because we've been doing quarantine episodes for months, so I threw it in the intro because I forgot it might come up. But so I forgot to eat dinner, which means it's pretty good. I would say it's a good thing we're not going to do a 3-hour show because it could get sloppy. It doesn't take much for me to get pretty drunk, so back on vodka and cranberry, but the show won't be 3 hours, so I probably won't go full Chad Colt slurring the thick Wisconsin accent tonight.
All right, so yeah, I'm I had to give this a shot. I normally be pretty close to the dark beers by now, but haven't quite got there. So Bud Light Seltzer is what I got here, the lemon lime flavor. So these are 16-ounce cans. This Bud Light Seltzer as a whole, and this flavor in particular, so unpopular that we were trying to give these cans away. Basically, we would give you one of these 16-ounce cans of lemon lime Bud Light Seltzer with the purchase of any Budweiser product, and people literally didn't want these things. So I couldn't even get rid of about 3 cases worth. They just credited to me. They're not even out of date, and just said, here, take them if you want them or whatever. So I did. Ended up with about 9 cans worth. I figured I'd give it a shot, and if it was bad, I'd just do what I would have done with it anyway. So yeah, it's not good. It's not too good. But
so does it taste like Bud Light at all, or does it taste like...
No, it's just a straight up seltzer. So it's just the name of it. I'm not a big fan of these seltzers anyway. They're a little too bitter for me. But yeah, this is definitely one of the worst I've had. So Bud Light Seltzer, lemon lime, pass it by.
This is not one of our more impressive What You Drinkins, which almost you wonder if we're going to get canceled for this. Cancel this segment because it was too shameful. But
too bad. All right, guys, we're going to take a quick break here, and we'll come back and talk about the Charlie Kaufman film. Thanks, everybody, for downloading and listening to the Flicksation podcast. Head over to Flicksation.com, our hub of operations on the World Wide Web. Follow the show on Twitter at Flicksation. Keeps you up to date on what's going on at Flicksation.com. Like the show on Facebook, our most active of social media platforms. Always something going on when you like the Flicksation podcast on Facebook. Subscribe to the show on iTunes or Stitcher. Either place, please do us a favor, give us a lofty star rating or a short little review. It helps folks find the Flicksation podcast, and thanks as always for that. If you're trying to get in contact with the show, you can do that on our voicemail line via call or text anytime 24/7, 608-535-9302. That's based in Madison, Wisconsin, so long-distance charges are going to apply. The email address, flicksationpodcast@gmail.com. If you're looking for old episodes of the Flicksation podcast that are no longer available on iTunes or Stitcher, you can find those at flicksation.libsyn.com. That's flicksation.libsyn, libsyn.com. Are you into the show Twin Peaks? If so, check out our other podcast, The Bookhouse Podcast. Like us at facebook.com/bookhousepodcast and subscribe to the show on iTunes. Thanks again, everybody, for downloading the Flicksation podcast. All right, welcome back, everybody. Second half of the show here. We're going to talk about the recent Netflix release. This one written and directed by Charlie Kaufman. This one called I'm Thinking of Ending Things. This one stars Jesse Buckley, Jesse Plemons, Toni Collette, and David Thewlis. Nothing is as it seems when a woman experiencing misgivings about her new boyfriend joins him on a road trip to meet his parents at their remote farm. All right, so I think we're fans of Kaufman overall, for sure. For me, more of a writing, and his directing stuff has been a little hit or miss for me, but we'll get into that as we go. But I'm thinking of Ending Things, his latest, dropped on Netflix about a week ago. So, of course, we're going to talk about it here on the podcast. So, when you watch something Charlie Kaufman especially directed, you know you're in for something interesting at the very least. A lot of people are big fans of his film Schenectady, New York. I was not so much. I've only seen it in the theater, I believe. Minister, we caught that at the Sundance Theater with your wife, as a matter of fact, that one. So I don't really remember us talking too much about it afterwards, but I wasn't a huge fan. Robert, you liked it quite a bit, right?
Yeah, that one I liked the first time I saw it. I think in theater with my brother and sister as well, and then I have revisited it since. But I'm with you. I like his collaborations with Spike Jonze and Michel Gondry a lot. I really like Schenectady, and I thought Anomalisa was pretty great and kind of wickedly crafted, but I haven't revisited it at all.
Yeah, so that's the hit and miss part for me. I definitely was much more in tune with Anomalisa than I was, at least the first viewing of Schenectady. Though I do feel like I do want to revisit Schenectady and get a new look at it. Being a few years removed, I have a feeling I'd like it a little bit better this time around. Minister, thoughts on Kaufman overall?
Oh boy. Well, yeah, it comes into play a lot probably with how I feel about this one, but I think my tastes have changed a lot. I don't know if it's apparent, but so I've been a fan of most of his stuff. I think I loved Schenectady at the time. I think Anomalisa's pretty recent, so I had shifted a little. But so I think I won't go long, but I think it's important to my take kind of on him. I feel like in the last 5 years, I get off much less on the cerebral films and much more, again, on mood, atmosphere, music, but specifically absurdity. And sometimes I try to think about how I feel about these movies and why. And I do attribute a lot of stuff to just laziness at times. Like, I'm wondering, am I lazy? But I think just my view of the world is different. I've had a lot of disillusionment, but in different ways. Now I'm kind of just accepting the world is extremely absurd and unexplainable. And then, sorry to go as dark, and then we die. So I don't think things can be figured out. And I find myself less interested. I find it tedious sometimes to just figure it out. And that's probably why I do like a Bruno Dumont movie that is saying things and doing things. But when absurdity is at the center of things, I just feel like that's the world I see. So I'm less into some of the unpacking of a old Christopher Nolan mind bender or and Kaufman's that's not what he is. It's kind of a lot of both, but it changes how you watch a movie sometimes. And sometimes I feel like I check out in a way where I'm not unlocking the keys to things, and that matters probably with this movie. So it's like I like almost everything he's ever done. I don't know if I ever want to watch any of them again, and I don't think I'd really like them the same way.
Yeah.
So
that's interesting. I guess when you said cerebral, I was thinking more along the lines of what Kaufman does. I see you were going more towards like what Nolan and stuff does, but because to me his films are sort of cerebral. They're confusing, but they make you think a lot. But yeah, this is throw in like the right environment and just another great stew of a film here, I think. I was a big fan of I'm Thinking of Ending Things. Didn't know what I would expected, but what I got here was just three kind of great separate acts. Very confusing. I don't know. We can talk about it later on. I don't know if I get more out of this than just kind of a interesting offshoot take of like the circle of life or something, but first act, you have, I guess we'll call her the woman, right? We never find out her name, do we?
She's called several names, like Louisa, Lucy, different variations of that. But
there was
she's credited as the young woman, and I think the book it's adapted from just calls her the young woman.
Okay. Jessie Buckley plays the young woman who is basically on a road trip with Jesse Plemons, her current boyfriend, to meet his parents. So Act 1 is basically this drive to the parents' house. It's a good setup piece. You don't really have an idea where you're going yet because it starts to get a little crazier in the second act. But the second act arrives and we're visiting with her parents, which is Toni Collette and David Thewlis. As it gets kind of weird there, you see the parents in various states of life, and it just kind of jumps all over the map as the woman character interacts with. And the third act, as they leave the house, gets even more surreal yet, and you kind of get mixed up with this janitor character that kind of showed up once in a while in the first two acts. I think the cast is pretty fantastic here. I read that this was originally supposed to be Brie Larson with Jesse Plemons. Some scheduling issues got in the way there, so we ended up with Jessie Buckley, but I think she's perfect in this film for sure. Plemons continues to amaze me because he seems like a guy overall, he just gives this vibe as kind of this dopey guy that I wouldn't typically like. But pretty much everything he does, I end up really appreciating him in the end, even though he might not seem like the greatest fit for just about anything he's in at first. And this film was no exception. I was kind of like, Plemons. And and he delivered too. So funny in parts. I'll take kind of half crazy David Thewlis any day. So always fun there. Maybe it's up its own ass a little bit, and I could see that argument. I think he just does a great job with the environment and making it interesting to the point where I was pretty much riveted the whole time, even though I barely it's confusing and it's hard to, again, I don't know what I came out with ultimately on it, but I love there's like a dissertation on that Cassavetes movie in the middle there. What's this? I want to say Girl Interrupted, but that's not right.
A Woman Under the Influence?
Influence, yeah, A Woman Under the Influence. So what's interesting about the woman character is she doesn't seem very dark at first, but gets very dark at times. So it's just a really good juggling act of a performance here for Jessie Buckley in particular. But did enjoy this film. I do feel like I could watch this another go around, unlike most of the Kaufman films. And it's taken me, almost 20 years to want to rewatch Schenectady. So yeah, so far this is probably my favorite of the Kaufman directed films.
What was your favorite of his altogether? I don't think you said it yet.
Eternal Sunshine, probably.
Yeah.
Just thinking off the top of my head, but if not, that's way up there.
Yeah, delivered. I'm in agreement with a lot of what you said because I've kind of always just appreciated Kaufman for just pushing the boundaries or kind of exploding the norms of what a screenplay can do or can be. I mean, when he first started doing it, I don't know, 15 years ago, 20 years ago, I was still learning, but he still does that now, and I appreciate that about him. But he also makes us interrogate that with him, like what are the norms for screenplay and why, and where can we kind of push it. And he makes flawed characters in these vulnerable moments always in his films, and these like deep expressions. The characters want to express themselves, but it's always about not being able to relate to anyone or to himself. Like Kaufman's not good at, he doesn't really understand himself fully, but he knows he needs to he knows what he needs to say, but maybe not why. And so for us to it's kind of a fruitful endeavor to try to figure him out or figure his films out because, he hasn't figured it out totally, and he makes it so you can read it multiple ways. And so, I don't know, it's not like a riddle to me. It's kind of a fun aside. And his offbeat sense of humor gets me as well. It always has. And so saying all that, I liked this movie, but I need more time to process the ending, I think, particularly because it's confounding. But again, I like that about it. I like that it is confounding. That's what I expect from Kaufman. And overall, I left this film I like the emotions of it. I like the details of the emotions that feel really developed or really real or really granular. And so I can enjoy the film just on that. The puzzle aspect is elusive to me on first watch. I have questions, lots of questions, and I'll be interested to hear people's theories on them. But that's like a side project that's fun. That can give a deeper experience. But I'm happy with just the way he depicts emotion is different than other directors. He's got the square aspect ratio working here in the smallest credits ever to bring you into it. And I kind of like that because when I went to go watch the Denzel version, the Jonathan Demme version of Manchurian Candidate, I realized my DVD from the library was in full screen aspect ratio, which is square on your widescreen TV these days because it's a 2004 movie, and I forgot that we still had square TVs back then apparently. And so be on the lookout for that when you rent DVDs from your library. But after watching Kaufman's film in the square format, then I was like, oh yeah, I'll do the Denzel movie in the square format, even though that's not the way Jonathan Demme intended me to see it. But the square format is what Kaufman wanted, the way he wanted us to watch it. I definitely agree with everything Eric said about the cast. I think I didn't know that about Brie Larson. I think she would be great in this role too, but Jessie Buckley's fantastic in this. She just it's clearly a series of choices that she's making, but we stay with her almost all the way through this bizarro house, this bizarro road trip, and she is confused. We're with her. We're confused with her. She's our way into it, the surrogate, but we're trying to piece together her background, and she has all these different names, like we mentioned. She has multiple different careers. You know, she's an artist, or she's a poet, or she's a physicist. She's all these different. She's a waitress at some point. It is like a structure of Meet the Parents, but meet the parents at different phases of their life, and it has the setup of it's a horror movie setup. It gets creepy when they're driving to the house and the windshield wipers come on because it's snowy landscape, but the windshield wipers are loud on the soundtrack, and then there's this weird swing set that's in front of this abandoned property, but Jesse Plemons' character dismisses it. It's weird from then, and then this weird sign and the weird parents, and it gets creepy, and the way that Jesse Plemons is so good at being awkward. Totally agree with Eric that I'm never happy to see him when he comes on screen. I'm like, oh, Jesse Plemons is in this? I had no idea in this movie. I didn't know that it was any of these actors were in this movie. I didn't know much about this film other than it's Kaufman. The rest I wanted to be fresh, and it was. And but Plemons is always like, I'm really not a big fan of Plemons. But then afterwards, I'm always impressed with what he does with it. I did see influences of like Ari Aster here, especially like Toni Collette sitting at the dinner table, the lighting on her, but also the road trip. It's a breakup film, kind of like Ari Aster's other movie, Midsummer. In the way it's like a trip at the end of a relationship that could make or break it, and it breaks it. Same thing going on here. At least that's the surface level of this film. It might not even be that at all because it's so weird. But I was not expecting that kind of horror setup. It's not a horror film, but it employs a horror setup. But then it's very melancholy, as you can kind of tell from the title. You know, I'm thinking of ending things, but then immediately you're questioning: is it starting with a suicidal thought, or is it just about breaking up, or is it something else altogether? Is it not about either one of those? If there's a reading that it wouldn't be. We get voiceover narration from her, from the main character, from the young woman, or Jessie Buckley. But is it a journal entry, or is it just like a voiceover for a movie? No, it's like her internal monologue. It's employing these different filmic languages all together, and like you choose your own thread kind of thing, I guess, or it shifts between gears in a different way than you're used to. But it's melancholy, like I said, like about coming home is awful, and these sad poems, or on the ride back home from meeting the parents, the young woman's personality kind of changes because she's when she's commenting on the Cassavetes film, A Woman Under the Influence. Apparently she's actually reciting to Pauline Kael, the famous New York Times reviewer, a film reviewer, her kind of takedown of the film, or just her thoughts, her opinion on the Gina Rowlands performance in that movie. And so the young woman's kind of taking the affectation of Pauline Kael's voice and using it. And there's also a musical number in this film, and there's another film within a film where it's like this flashback or some fictionalized version of how they met, I think, directed by Robert Zemeckis, this weird kind of breakout film within a film. And like I said, there's a musical number. There's also recited poetry, recited film criticism. So it's like art within art. And Kaufman's always interested in how we relate to art and how art expresses things for us and how we express things through art, which I'm totally fascinated by. But it's also got that funniness and its bizarreness. And we have these veteran actors with Deulis and Collette kind of playing these head conditions for comedy. Like one has tinnitus or tinnitus, and the other one has like, I don't know, a Band-Aid on his head, and he stares at the young woman that his son has brought home, and I don't know, he's got some kind of head thing going on that he's using for his acting. And they have prosthetics and makeup later that kind of promote this instant pathos. We go from comedy to pathos because we see them as senior citizens all of a sudden. And there's notes around it says things like Jake's childhood bedroom, and they're talking about the fact that it's Jake's childhood bedroom. That's the Jesse Plemons character. And those notes are comedic, but they're there for like somebody that's senile or suffering from Alzheimer's. They need those reminders of what this room is and where they are. Or the kind of funny argument they have about genius versus genus. That debate is funny. Or I think Kaufman's doing some meta references. At some point, a character says, "I don't want to live in a warehouse." I thought that was a Schenectady, New York reference. Or later on, we get an aerial view of a snow-covered car in a parking lot. This guy and this girl on the date. That's, to me, that's an Eternal Sunshine reference. I don't know what it's saying, but it goes with the movie within the movie and the musical number. And at the end, they're doing Jesse Plemons does kind of a performance from the musical Oklahoma. But the high school, it's like in this high school where this janitor works that we've met through the film, and the people watching the performance of Oklahoma is like this. It's like a high school drama crowd, but they're dressed up like they're going to the Oscars, Oscar night, and then they're in this exaggerated old age makeup, not the convincing prosthetics we saw 10 minutes earlier in the spooky house that changes time. To me, it's spooky. It's like this obvious exaggerated facial makeup on the people in this Oscars audience at this high school watching Oklahoma. I don't know what it's saying, and this is the final scene of the movie with this musical number. It's not, the lyrics aren't super revealing or poignant to end the movie on. It's just Oklahoma, I think. But then we see a car parked outside in the snow that hasn't moved. What happened to the girl that we've been spending the time with? Who's the janitor? Are they connected? What's with the high school? Is Jake friends with the janitor? How do they know each other? Is Jake imagined by the janitor? Because this film's really about inner thoughts. We're with the woman character most of the film. It's her inner thoughts over and over again, and these bizarre communications, these bizarre voicemails she's getting, these bizarre meetings of the parents in multiple iterations. And we see her surroundings morphing and the people's ages morphing. And the fact that Jake bringing her home for the first time wasn't ready to go in the house. He's buying time. There's something up with this house or this area that he drove her into. Did he take her into this like space-time portal to get to know his parents for some oddball reason? And they tell different stories about how they met. They keep changing that. Yeah, I kept seeing influences of Stephen King to get to the spookiness, to transition from the weirdness to the spookiness. It reminded me of Stephen King kind of tricks. But then it comes back to the emotional sort of interrogation that Kaufman always goes for, asking like, what are you thinking? What are you feeling? Try to have frustration of not being able to communicate between two people. This movie, more than even maybe Eternal Sunshine or Adaptation, kind of explores that rift between two people and just leaves the film there, not trying to really cross that divide, not trying to get on the other side of it. They're not trying to like come together. They're trying to break up, or at least one of them is, the main character is. But maybe that's too simple. That's surface level. Maybe it's more imagined than that. But I don't know. I've been watching a lot of heady movies today. I could go any direction with it, but it's really it just kind of grabbed me at a kind of instinctual level, and then the mental kind of gymnastics that you could do with it is secondary. That does make me want to revisit this one again, and I think I'll benefit more from it.
And it's on Netflix, so you can do it 16 times. Yeah, and there's a hell of a lot of value in making a film that makes you want to go back, I would say. So almost no matter what you feel about almost any of his films, I think that's something that's there. And the fact that I know I threw out Nolan and him, but I mean, I know the whole Nolan thing until Interstellar was that there was a cold detachment. I think he kind of changed that with Interstellar a little bit. I haven't seen Tenet, of course, yet, but I don't think there's necessarily a cold detachment with Kaufman. In fact, when he doesn't direct, there's a lot of emotion. I think maybe it diminished a little bit since Schenectady, but yeah, it's not a perfect comparison when I was kind of talking about that heady films, but there's a lot of ways to go here, and I would say the one thing for me, Robert said it's kind of a horror setup, but not a horror film. I probably agree with that, but I think when it worked best for me were the bits where it was almost full-on horror or even psychological horror. I would say my favorite segment of the whole film, and it could even be a standalone and not be connected to anything else, was the trip to I think it was called Tulsi Town, which was a Dairy Queen type ice cream place in the middle of a night in a blizzard in the middle of nowhere, Oklahoma. And it's just a really again, I guess I pointed towards my love of absurdity. This was like absurd horror. Like everything about it was unnerving. Every performance was weird. Every interaction there was very sinister. And that just little creepy segment and the whole idea and was wonderful. And then the other, I did feel pretty emotionally detached to this thing for the most part, other than, and this is probably part of almost everything he's ever made, especially Schenectady, just existential dread. That's definitely there. He's definitely dealing with death constantly, and that's hard not to just think about constantly in life. So that I felt some of that, especially at the house, and just the horror of, if you read it as her looking at, holy shit, look what I'm signing up for with this man, with this family, with life. This is what life is. These people are going to deteriorate. We're going to have to be there for them. This is grotesque and horrifying. There's a lot of horror in that. But specifically, I guess, like psychological stuff with her personality, or just like her life. She writes poetry. She does, I think she paints. And within the house that she's visiting, she sees that her paintings within the house are just like poster advertisements, and she realizes her poetry is just poems that exist in books in his room from childhood. So like this idea of who am I, what, how, I don't know, like this unraveling of, am I real, what, or anything I've done is real, who am I, what the fuck's happening, all that horror. That's when it works a little bit, but there's a big question. Okay, so I sat with this movie for like 4 or 5 days, or like 3-4 days. I had a feel on it, but right before recording, I just looked up an interview with Kaufman, and in his opinion, he makes it very, very clear, very early, what this movie is about. And if you know that, it completely, if you don't get it, or at least fully get it, which based on the way you guys have talked, you didn't completely key in on it and shape your view around that, and I did not either. So reading that, it completely makes you it makes me wonder, okay, well, if I do give this the second viewing, is this a completely different experience? But that's clearly not what he intended if he said he made it very, very explicit early. So do you guys care to know that, or do you want me to just review it as if we don't know?
I mean, I'd like to know. I don't know about Robert.
Yeah, I just heard that in the book that you don't know about the janitor until late, like the last scene. But in the film, Kaufman shows you the janitor very early. So is what you're referring to about the janitor at all, or totally something different?
Yeah, somewhat. And I was picking up on the janitor part, and it doesn't. I'm not trying to say I'm smart because of it, because it's not the case. But I mean, so he is the janitor.
Okay,
that's
what I thought. I didn't get that though. Yeah, okay.
And it's of something. I mean, how it works, but he created her, and he's kind of working through his sad life or his end or his suicide or whatever it is. But she not existing is interesting because to me, Buckley's great. She's kind of this audience surrogate into this madness. I mean, to me, it felt like she was walking into the fucking Texas Chainsaw Massacre family's house. Like it was fucked up. But it's really interesting to me that the most real character was the one that's not real. So that's a weird deal. But that, I mean, it reworks what this movie's about, because if this movie is about a sad man, pathetic man looking back on his life, maybe the end of it, maybe ending his life, that's an interesting concept, something I would want to explore. But having watched this film, I didn't like it, and I didn't like a lot of the things you liked. So it's hard for me to imagine that giving this new shade to it. You know, you look at a scene of the dinner table and you realize she's not real. Does that make, this is my big horrible admission here, I guess, that, or my big controversial take. Like, I think Toni Collette here is bad mugging actor of the year, like worst performance of the year here. So does me knowing she's not real make Toni Collette's performance less insufferable? I doubt it. So it's a weird one. Like, it does rework how you look at the movie, and if you don't get a movie and now you get it, it's hard to say, well, that's bad or good. It's just how you experienced it. But I don't think it's going to change the fact that there's a lot of, not a lot, but it's intermittently insufferable to me. And I think that long Cassavetes debate in the car for 15 minutes, completely insufferable to me. Toni Collette, insufferable. I would say the last 20 minutes, insufferable. All of it, the dancing, the speech, pretty much everything in the school. Just like please end. Not I wasn't mad because I'm still interested and I respect him enough, but I was not going with where he was going. Now, if I don't get it but don't go with it, that's different. I don't know. It's still cinematically is it's pretty insufferable. So it's a weird one. It's like I wouldn't say it's bad. I'd say it does not work for me. I don't think his humor meshes with me. I think Thewlis had a few moments and I absolutely love him. So for him not to be like, just absolutely flying at all times is a huge negative to me. Like I watched a season of Fargo and every moment with David Thewlis is like amazing. And actually with Jesse Plemons too, the best performance he's ever given was in that second season of Fargo. He's amazing. They're both just kind of there here for me. So I wasn't on his wavelength comedically, a little bit with the horror. And I don't think that goes away by the revelations that Kaufman thinks we should have gotten very, very early on. But I have a hard time understanding why we should have gotten it very early. I could see getting it when you start seeing the way her paintings are like I said, the paintings on the wall, her poem not being her poem. Like you start questioning what's real, who is she, her identity and stuff. But I don't know where, I missed the cues if you're talking early in the car ride. So I'm not sure.
For me, it makes 100% total sense now that I hear that. But to me, the first, other than some very subtle hints, I don't think until she goes into the basement is when it should become apparent. It didn't even come apparent to me then, but that, that's when she goes down and the poems are in the books, and that's pretty much where that's laid out.
And she sees his childhood photo and say, "Wait, that's my photo."
Yeah, that's me. That's me. Yeah.
Then you guys are the same. Whose is it really? Why would the one person make the other one think that was theirs? It kind of reminded me of that show Legion, implanting memories, fake memories, and kind of comedically deconstructing it in layers. Like in one house, you go upstairs and they're different age. You go to another room and they're different age. Legion does that kind of thing too, which is the same reader as Fargo.
Pretty fun show. Pretty fun. Well, I actually bailed on it late because I still don't watch that much movie. But and this doesn't seem like a great way to say, like some huge negative, because unpleasant can be what's best about a movie. But I found this just pretty unpleasant to sit through. Everything at the farm, the animals, the pig with maggots. I don't know. I just didn't get on its wavelength almost ever. I was pretty surprised because I was very excited. So I know I'm just hitting the same point, but it's really hard for me to believe I watch this again and there's a 180 and things that aren't funny are funny, or things that aren't scary are scary, or whatever. But in my whole life, that's happened like a couple times, and it's almost always due to like a weird viewing experience. It happened with A Field in England where I just didn't see it in a good way, and then it's one of my favorite films of the decade. And this could be that type of thing, but it's pretty rare to do that 180. So I don't know if I'll go back to this or not, but I think it's my least favorite thing I've ever seen of his. So I think it's got a lot more quirks than Anomalisa. Anomalisa is what it is. I don't think it's this big cerebral thing. I don't think it's like just less out there in general. So I think that's kind of what it is, and that couldn't have a big change. But I have a hard time believing it would have to be a much bigger emotional connection to this. And if understanding that character and maybe looking back on that life so sadly, or just analyzing a life, if that somehow connects emotionally on a second viewing, it could be different. But as it sits, like not really into this other than maybe 15, 20 minutes worth in a 2-hour and 20-minute movie.
I could totally understand that reaction. I felt some of that when it was over. Like, I think this is my least favorite I've seen on first viewing. Like, I always like his stuff right away. This one I don't like right away. I mean, I like it, but I don't love it. I think it's good, not great. I did think I found myself, cause the pig comes back up again. I didn't like the maggot thing earlier with the pig and the farm, and right when it ended, I'm thinking, oh, hopefully this is like, maybe he's ahead of the audience, what the audience is quite ready for. Like when a band comes out with a new album and you're not feeling it, but you all like all their other stuff. But later on, when you zoom out, it does fit nicely into his catalog. As brilliant as his catalog is, this might be his last directorial work. He says, like, he looks at it as a swan song. I sure hope he keeps like collaborating, and I'm anxious to read his book Antkind. It's getting mixed reviews, but sounds like it's really funny. My initial thought, and still, is that it feels a little thinner than Eternal Sunshine or Malkovich, or like I wish it was closer to Upstream Color, because I was thinking of the pigs in that film, and toward the end of this one, and the relationship.
That's a very emotional one, Upstream
Yeah.
Color.
This does not seem to have as much going on. Like, I give Kaufman the benefit of the doubt just because of his track record. He's probably packing more in than I'm able to unpack so far, but it doesn't feel like it's definitely not as clear as he's saying. Maybe like filmmakers that think on his level, which are few and far between, pick it up right away. But I don't think he makes it clear. He doesn't spell it out for us. And I'm usually fine with that, but I was frustrated by the ending. I usually am great. I'm in favor of ambiguous endings, but this one made me scratch my head and feel like I didn't leave on a high note. But I couldn't deny that I had a good time with it, and I was with it all the way and feeling what the characters were feeling and trying to piece things together. And I was happy that it didn't all tie up at the end. So I don't know. Maybe it's just my bias towards Kaufman. He's got a lot of goodwill with me, but I did feel some of the exact same things you're feeling there, Ian.
And he deserves the goodwill. I was so happy when they left that house. I did not think they'd ever leave that house, and I didn't like pretty much anything there. So I did like that section, and I guess I just liked the part at the ice cream, and lots of talk about the ice cream and what to do with the ice cream. But I have another question about it, and again, probably something that you wouldn't know, because I don't know why the fuck you would know. But I would be curious if either of you know what you're supposed to do with this. So there's a scene near the end where he gives an old Jesse Plemons character is all like with bad makeup giving a speech after he was given an award, right, at the high school. Remember this scene? He's like, the whole crowd is like bad makeup. And so that speech apparently is word for word the final speech as Russell Crowe gets the award at the end of A Beautiful Mind, which is that probably bad Ron Howard movie about what is he, like a mathematician who's a racist? Okay, so if that's true, like, what do you do with that? Like, as a viewer, what are you supposed to do with that? Like, it's another thing that he saw at one point. So he's like I guess it's him. I guess it's another fact of him, like, not having any personality or thoughts other than what he's consumed. But I guess that's it. I don't know. I just don't know what to do with these references, like, other than it's pointing to, like, how we are just an accumulation, or we're just what we've accumulated in life, and we are nothing other than what we've seen and read, and that's all we are, and that's depressing, I guess. Maybe. I don't know. I know you guys haven't had that thing.
I think that is some commentary because of, well, two things. We see the janitor watching movies, right, in the school, I think. A couple of times we see him watching Oklahoma and something else. I don't think it's not A Beautiful Mind, I don't think. But if he's imagining this, then he maybe is influenced by the stuff he's just watching, I guess.
Yeah, I guess I'm working through it as I ask you the question, so I kind of answered it. And there's something there, I guess.
And the fact that Plemons is overly literary. He is the insufferable one in this film to me.
For sure.
To make him that, he's that well-actually guy, and he's so many literary references. And so he's creating her. And there was some conversation at the table from the mother about an award and like a participation award, and he was against the award then. So when he started giving the speech towards the end, I thought it was a callback to that. But if it's a direct quote of A Beautiful Mind, then I don't know if that connection is there, other than, okay, I'm imagining these make-believe story. I need a speech here. oh, I'm gonna, you cribbed from what inspired you. And so, like I'm saying, I'm picking up on Stephen King vibes and Ari Aster. I also see a lot of Get Out in this movie. It's taking, my significant other is evil. They took me to this to meet their parents, and they're gonna kill me. I'm gonna be attacked, or it's really weird, or there's this woman with a rash telling me to get out, telling me I'm worried about you. Really strong, and the animals, the dead animals, very strong Get Out vibes. So if he's wearing his influences on his sleeve in this film, even calling back to his own films, and the janitor is doing the same thing, and he's creating. Like, I'm thinking of Inception now, with Leo DiCaprio telling the architect that it's pure creation and you get lost in limbo creating these make-believe worlds. If that's what the janitor's doing, then he's just pulling in references because he's lost with – he can't make things from scratch. He has to rely on references that have been fed to him. So I'm sure there's some commentary about that from Kaufman in there.
Well, is that Kaufman analyzing himself? That his whole film is just references to things he's taken in and understood, and he's actually working through his own questions about that.
And his outsiderness in Hollywood, referencing on that couldn't get a film made for 12 years. He doesn't just consider Anomalisa to be his own film because he co-directed it. He references Zemeckis, even though looking at his IMDb, right. He has a Zemeckis-produced film coming out starring Tom Holland, directed by Doug Liman, like a sci-fi film that Kaufman co-wrote, I guess. Nice. And there's a reference in this film to a Billy Crystal movie, Forget Paris. Yeah. That's oddball, but that's like, why would Kaufman is such an outsider? Why would he reference like such a box office? I don't think the movie did well at the box office. It's strangely enough. I really like the movie Forget Paris. It's like I don't know, for some reason, a weird Billy Crystal movie that I really like. But I'd love to, I would actually talk about that on the podcast with you guys if you ever wanted. It's a basketball referee movie.
That one. Nice. What about Eddie? Let's do that with Eddie.
Well, Forget Paris is interesting because apparently Deborah Winger, I think is the actress, she quit acting after Forget Paris because of how Billy Crystal treated her making that film. And he's been known to do that. Other people have accused him of ruining their careers. But why is this film referencing? So again, it's about like Hollywood inside baseball. Kaufman has dealt with a lot of that in his career. So why is he referencing, Insider Baseball with Billy Crystal and Forget Paris in this film? It's a lot of influential stuff, and the janitor's doing the same thing as Kaufman. So it's meta, or an artist making art that comments on their art industry and the art making process. And so I'm always into that kind of meta art shit.
Well, it's a hell of a lot more to think about than a basic, ship factory thing. So I would bristle at anyone that wants to just straight out dismiss, something Kaufman does. I know very few people who love movies will do that, but there's a lot of people who do just dismiss it up his own ass, which that's fine. I think I wouldn't dismiss saying you don't like it, because I don't think I liked it, but it's a hard one to describe. How you feeling, Eric, after all that? Feel the same about it?
Yeah, pretty much. I feel like I probably should have picked up on that too, but I guess, you guys have mentioned it a little bit, but something that was pretty fascinating for me also was the fact that it kept ramping towards a more traditional horror, just the way with the setups and stuff, and it never went there. It kind of did its own thing, but drive there seemed ominous, and the not going in, and all that animal stuff all led you to believe, oh no, and then don't go in the basement. Oh, you got to stay out of the basement. Yeah, I had all these like traditional horror setups that I kept kind of wondering if any of it was going to pay off. And I guess some of it, she went into the basement, and it wasn't exactly what I expected, but the film connected for me, even though I didn't really understand it at the time.
That's pretty important. So I would guess, if that's the case, a rewatch with different revelations and different viewpoints is only going to enhance it.
Probably. All right, guys. Yeah, that'll do it then here for episode number 184.
Well, do you want to rate it? It's been
forever. Yeah, we haven't done that in a while. Letterboxd ratings start with, I guess I went first, so we'll start with me. I'm at a solid 3.5 on this one. Robert?
Yeah, I'm at a 3.5 as well, which is low for me on Kaufman, but it's still a good score. I think it's a good movie, and it's confounding and emotionally resonant. which is what I look for from Kaufman. 3.5.
Shit, I think that's higher than it was when I looked at your rating 2 hours ago.
No, I did change it. Yeah, I was back and forth at first.
Oh, okay.
I'm like, this is a 3.25,
Oh,
and I do think that I'm going to like it more on second viewing. And so, but then 3 felt too low, so I put it back 3.5. So yeah, it's been shifting.
That's good, and it probably will continue. You think you'll rewatch this?
I do, yeah. Probably by the time we do best of or something like that, I'll probably give it a rewatch in the next 6-8 months.
Yeah, it has a chance to move a lot. I'm interested. I mean, I've probably been I don't know if I've ever been less confident in a rating, but I mean, this thing is a 2. 2 out of 5. 2 out of 5 for me. Yeah.
Well, all right. FlicksationPodcast at gmail.com. If you have any thoughts on either film or The Minister's 2 rating there.
I don't want to fucking hear it.
There you go. He doesn't want to fucking hear it. 608-535-9302. Call or text the voicemail line anytime with your thoughts as well. Please subscribe to the show and give us a lofty star rating wherever you consume the show. Help folks find the Flicksation Podcast. Still got a quarantine special that's going to drop after the release of this show. Once again, I'm Eric. You can find me on Twitter, Hazer, Hazer75. Minister, thanks for joining us, as always. Now that the Premier League is back in swing, it's going to take up some time from your schedule.
Yeah, I mean, if West Ham would have just gotten relegated as they deserved, I wouldn't have to watch any of it, or wouldn't be able to watch any of it. I'd have so much more time to watch so many more movies, but they're up for another year. So, I mean, I think I watched more movies in the last 2 weeks than I had the last 4 months. So there has been a shift, and I'm enjoying it. By the way, the Charlie Kaufman movie, 2 stars, equal to Bill and Ted 3. Also.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I was going to ask for your hot take on that. I had always heard it was bad, and then all of a sudden, here's a not terrible review from Jericho.
Right. Yeah.
So I was like, what the hell's going on here? But no, not good. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, 2 is not extremely terrible for me, because I'll give an okay movie a 2.5 or a 3. But yeah, it's not so great. But so I am watching stuff, and I do log stuff on Letterboxd as of this year. I don't always rate it immediately, but I do rate all the new ones within a few days. So, Thin White Duke on Letterboxd. I'm on Twitter, thin_white_Duke. But I don't really want to hear about this 2 stars for the Kaufman. I don't care. And I don't really want to hear you mocking West Ham either. It's painful. And I don't want to hear anything about Giannis leaving the fucking Bucks. You're blocked if you say it. You're out. You're out of my life.
Yeah, things we just don't need right now. Robert Gassaway.
Watching more films, I do log them and rate them on Letterboxd. So you can check those out. I'm at Robert Gassaway on Letterboxd and on Twitter.
All right, thanks again, guys. We'll catch you in a week or 2 here. Until then, this is Eric for Robert and the Minister saying we will catch you on the flick side.